Welcome to Glass Half Full with Leslie Krongold. She shares her stories, experiences, and knowledge of living and coping with a chronic health condition. Learn about tools and resources and hear inspirational interviews that help you to live a life filled with quality and dignity. With 2 decades of support group leadership, Leslie's ready to help you make lemonade out of life's lemons. Are you ready?
Welcome to podcast episode number 6. Today's episode is different from all previous episodes. In episode 1, I laid the groundwork for this series. I told you a little about myself, my chronic health condition. Do you remember the name of the condition? Here's a multiple choice question. Leslie's chronic health condition is A. Terminitis, B. Senioritis, C. Multiple sclerosis, or D. Myotonic dystrophy. D is the correct answer, myotonic dystrophy. Terminitis? What the heck is that? Senioritis is a condition experienced during the latter part of one's junior year of high school and throughout the entire next school year. Symptoms include not giving a hoot about anything. Multiple sclerosis is what everyone thinks you have, even after you've told them a dozen times it's called myotonic dystrophy. Episode 7 actually does include a guest with multiple sclerosis. Okay, back to the recap of previous episodes. In episode 2, I had a conversation with my friend Laurel, who happens to have bipolar condition. In episode 3, I interviewed, via Skype, Ted, who has a neuromuscular condition called Kennedy's disease. Ted started a nonprofit in Virginia where he makes boating accessible for all. My guest for the 4th episode was Melissa, a friend from elementary school who was diagnosed with colon cancer a few years ago and recently started a foundation and wrote the Cancer Fight song. And the last episode was with Joanne Lyons, a yoga teacher focused on working with disabled yogis and teaching yoga teachers how to work with disabled yogis. And now this. Here you are, episode 6. At some point, I will need to give this episode a title and a description, but right now, the most succinct way to tell you what you're in store for is this episode is about my book club. Hey, don't stop listening. I saw you rolling your eyes. It's really more than that. I mean, lots of things on the surface sound really simplistic, like, oh wow, Leslie has a monthly group at her house where friends come over and talk about a book. What's in it for me, you ask? Well, if we dig a little deeper, there are 2 areas of interest here. One is that this book group is an intentional means of social support for myself. I touched upon the importance of social support during the 1st episode, and I'll give you more information on this later, but let's get to the next area of interest. 2, brain plasticity. That is such a fun term to say out loud. Try it now in the comfort of your own home, car, or bathroom, wherever you tend to listen to podcasts. Brain plasticity, or neuroplasticity. It refers to the brain's ability to change throughout life. The human brain has the ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections between brain cells or neurons. So, old dogs can learn new tricks. And I'll talk about why this is important later. One of the common experiences for anyone diagnosed with a chronic health condition or becoming disabled are the dramatic changes that occur for you socially. This can range from having to limit your social life due to fatigue, limited mobility for certain activities, and dietary changes, to coping with the impact on your spouse or dating opportunities. I'm sure there are many ways this manifests for different people, but I'll just share what I've personally experienced. I used to love going out, and I still do have an incredible yearning for new experiences. But I learned years ago that I need more respite and refueling than my peers, my healthy peers. So gradually I pulled back. Parties were hard. My sensitivity toward crowds, heightened noise, bright lights, and difficulty physically navigating with lots of people close to me, it was too much. And it's such a difficult thing to describe to people that look at you and still see you as normal, quote unquote. So I stopped going to parties. Eventually, you're invited to fewer events, certain friends fall off your Rolodex or contact list, dance card. You get the idea. And then your hidden disability may become a little more noticeable. Weight loss, weakened gait or walkability, speaking more slowly. And I think this is frightening for some people. Not that anyone has ever said to me, Leslie, being around you makes me feel mortal, so I've got to take some distance. But I assume that's what subconsciously happens to many people still in the prime of their life and physical condition. Now, I didn't immediately feel compassion for some of these friends. I went through my cycle of anger and sadness, but sometimes you just have to let go. You know, one door closes and another one opens. I've been impatient about some of those doors opening, and it's in my nature to kick open a door to initiate more possibilities. And that's how the book group started. On May 17th, I have a blog post on the website called For the Love of Reading. I hope you'll check it out. It's actually a repost of an earlier blog, so the dates are a little confusing. But I started my current book group in 2012. I wanted to feel as comfortable as possible, so we meet at my house. During the past 4 years, there were 2 times I had to bow out of hosting the book club. The first time, the group met at another friend's home, and the second time I just went upstairs to sleep and everyone continued downstairs. Initially, I invited a few friends to the first book group meeting, as well as several people I was acquaintances with from yoga classes or local civic groups I'd been involved with. A few members have since moved out of town, and we've opened up to new people who check us out and may choose to stay or just drop in occasionally. The rules, so to speak, are few. 1, bring a vegetarian potluck dish to share. 2, read a fiction or non-fiction book related to the month's theme. And 3, have a good time. I tend to prefer reading non-fiction books and never wanted to force people to read a book I was interested in, and certainly didn't want to feel forced to read books others suggested. One woman in our group only reads science fiction, and she's pretty successful finding a sci-fi book no matter what the theme is. Violence, spirituality, the immigrant experience, animal behavior, or friendship. Yes, there are themes. At this point, let's hear from someone else in the book group. Do you remember Laurel from the podcast episode 2? I sat down with her recently and asked her to talk about our group.
I was in another book club where everybody read the same book. At first, I thought all book clubs were that way, and I know that most of them are. But this one is different, and it actually is more of an enriching experience because you get to hear about, with the book club being based around a theme and everyone picking their own book as it fits into the theme, you get to hear about, so many more books. And so when there's 8 people, rather than knowing about one book and hearing everybody's take on that one book, you end up coming out of there wanting to read the other 7 books. I tell other people in book groups about our book group.
Yeah.
Yes,
And what do
I
they
brag
say?
about it.
You do?
I do.
What do they say? Is it intriguing?
Yes. People are intrigued, but confused.
Yeah.
There's always an initial confusion because, most book groups do talk about the same book.
Yeah.
I just think it's a great way to explore books that you wouldn't necessarily read otherwise. I know there have been some topics that I thought, ugh, I'm not interested in reading anything
Like
about
what?
that. Well, okay, I'm not sure. Sports,
Violence? Oh,
sports,
sports. We haven't
sports,
done that yet.
and weather. I'm not so sure about.
Oh, weather's going to be great.
Oh, okay. Well, got it.
Weather is next month.
I want to hear some suggestions for that.
Okay.
Spies, I wasn't that interested in, but I found a fabulous book that I actually had my husband read too, and he almost never reads what I'm reading.
Oh, you enjoyed it? Did you enjoy
He
it?
did, yes.
Okay. In the first podcast episode, I talked about the 5 types of social support: information support, tangible assistance, esteem support, network support, and emotional support. This makes more sense to dissect when talking about facilitating a support group, but when we're just talking casually, you and me, and it's about life outside of the patient advocacy community, the idea of social support is different. It's one thing to be with people that share your condition and really understand your condition, but there's a larger arena where you want to be connected to people who share other things. Maybe it's your family. I've met people with health conditions that feel quite content with the social network supplied by their immediate and extended families. That's great. You're lucky. Many of us either live far from family or choose to live far from family. So we need to be more intentional with our social network. If you're healthy, your social network may be people you work with, your neighbors, friends you made at school, parents of your child's friends, but often with a chronic health condition, you become more isolated and need to have more control of your surroundings. I suppose a lot of people do feel socially connected through online networks, but that's not been a draw for me. I use Facebook and email as a communication tool, but generally a tool to communicate with people I've met in person and established a connection with. Here's a little more of my conversation with Laurel about our book group.
It gets you out of your own space of reading and writing, if you do that. And it brings it into a social realm that is very enriching. And I don't get out that much either. And coming to the book group is one of the highlights of my month. It's a big social
too.
get-together.
And it's safe. I mean,
Oh, absolutely, yes. Getting together with a group of other people that are readers makes reading almost a communal experience.
aside from the obvious, what's so darn important about this social network and social support? Many research studies have shown that social support is associated with positive health outcomes such as improved coping skills, lower depression, less stress and anxiety, a greater sense of well-being, and an enhanced quality of life. High levels of social support have been associated with better physical health and fewer symptoms of depression. Positive effects for cancer patients specifically include enhanced emotional and functional adjustment and effective treatment of disease-related symptoms. In the last podcast episode, I commented that I enjoyed the social aspects of going to a yoga class rather than maintaining a yoga practice at my own home. It's the combination of movement for my physical health and the connection with others for my emotional health that really is the kicker. At my monthly book group, we don't do any jumping jacks or downward dogs, but we do stretch our minds. And this comes back to the second area of interest, neuroplasticity. You can Google this term to learn more, and I'm by no means an expert on brain research, but I do know that brain health and maintenance is just as vital as exercising and taking care of the rest of our physical body. Some people may prefer Sudoku puzzles, but I prefer reading a book and noting how it relates to a theme, and then discussing that theme with a community of friends. And when we each share what we've learned, we see similarities and dissimilarities and learn together in a deeper way. And I know that's good for my brain. A couple of years ago, there was an article on Huffington Post about evidence-based research to support the activity of reading. They gave 6 examples. Number 1, apparently, reading a book is an effective way of dealing with stress. Number 2, adults who engage in brain activities like reading are less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. The third reason concerns sleep. Sleep experts recommend reading before bedtime as opposed to watching television or interacting with any electronic devices. Number 4, getting lost in a book, especially a fictional story, may increase our ability to empathize with others. Number 5, reading self-help books really does help people, especially those suffering from depression. And number 6, studies have found a strong correlation between reading as well as engaging in other mentally stimulating activities with a slower mental decline. People who exercised their minds later in life had a 32% lower rate of mental decline compared to their peers with average mental activity. I decided to seek another perspective on book groups, so I asked local librarian Linda Williams a few questions about the book group she facilitates on Bay Farm Island, which is a neighborhood not far from where I live.
The book group that I started is focused the same way yours is. I focused it on themes rather than single books because it belonged to a lot of book clubs. And what I found was often the most dynamic part of the conversation was when people were talking about other books. And you didn't get into this thing where you were, half of the people loved the book, half of the people didn't love it and didn't want to talk about it necessarily. It was just like, oh, I didn't like it, and some of the people hadn't read it. So if you give people a wider scope to choose from, then they can always, it seems to me you can come to the table with something that they have really enjoyed or they found something that is meaningful to them that they can express to other people. And plus that gives a wider scope to other people to be opened up to books that they might not have read, but without being forced to read them in the first place. This is actually the first group that I've facilitated, yes.
And you've been a member of other groups?
I've been a member of other groups, other times, other places.
So what makes a book group a good club?
I think it really depends, and I think a lot of it depends on finding the right people and the right facilitator and finding a place where you can all kind of come together. Some book groups turn out to be more social. Some tend to be very structured, almost, people feel like they have to write book reports to come to the meeting. And I think it just really depends on, what you can pull together. I mean, there's book groups for classic books, science fiction, just all over the place.
So how long has the book group on Bay Farm Island, when did it start?
It's been almost exactly a year. It's just been really great. We've got 10, 12 members right now ongoing, and really good response. Everybody's coming together. People are finding out that they've lived in the same neighborhood and they've never met. And that's the other thing I think about book clubs is the fact that you can meet people who are like-minded that you might not have even known were out in the community. What I'm seeing is that there's kind of a community of ladies who come to the library and they support each other in their reading. If somebody can't make it, they're getting books for them, they're sharing books, they're coming in and saying, oh, my friend read this, or my friend gave me this, and I'm recommending this. And this isn't really a book club, but it's a community of book readers who have kind of come together for their own support. And I think it's especially wonderful because most of these folks are in their 80s, and it's just really wonderful to see that sort of happening spontaneously so that you can do it in a formal sort of sense, or you can do it just, people getting together, reading and enjoying books, which I think is a wonderful kind of thing.
So new friendships have blossomed?
New friendships, support. that's the thing that I think is special about book clubs, is you can get those.
What type of themes have you covered?
We have done, we've just done some really general ones. We've done biography, we've done road trip books. One of the best ones that we did was graphic novels. And the reason that it was so great was that most of these people in this little group had not really read graphic novels. So I pulled together a whole bunch that I thought were really worthwhile.
Roz Chase?
Yes, that was one of
Did
them.
That go
that was
over well?
Yeah, no, they all, people were just, and some of them, there were things that they didn't like about it, but they thought it was eye-opening, and so we had so much fun with that. And it really is, it's just opening up in all kinds of different ways, everything from the Marvel comics all the way up to things that are just beautiful, practically art books, and things that are good literature, and, so just a lot of fun.
Do they get, the nature of the conversation, does it go pretty deep? Have you had moments of, intensity that you were surprised about?
Not on personal level, but certainly from time to time somebody has read something and it comes across strongly how much it's moved them, how much it's influenced them, and you can really hear the depth of what they've gotten out of it, and the whole group hears it, and that's usually the kind of book where other people are picking it up and saying, okay, I want to read this, I want to do this, And we've had moments when, even though everybody's reading a different book, a lot of times somebody will have read this book in the past or read this author in the past, and then bring in a totally different perspective that, well, that isn't what I saw, or that isn't what I heard, which is the kind of thing that gets conversation going, and
right.
That's what you want, without getting personal. It's not like... No fist fights.
Oh, yeah. That's good. There you have it. Book groups are a prescription for good health. But please consult your doctor. I am not a physician. In keeping with today's podcast topic, I want to introduce a couple of new Glass Half Full features to you. On the website, there's now a featured book in the sidebar. Each month we'll have a new book that is relevant to maintaining positive ways to cope with a chronic health condition. If you're already an active reader or would like to be supported by a community of readers, I invite you to join the Glass Half Full book group on Goodreads. I'll include a link in the podcast show notes. If you've enjoyed this and other podcasts, I hope you'll consider purchasing books featured on the Glass Half Full website directly by clicking on the links provided. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to Glass Half Full. Leslie invites you to leave a rating and review on iTunes. This helps spread the word to others dealing with chronic health issues. For show notes, updates, and more, visit the website glasshalffull.online. Glasshalffull.online.